College football is back, a small sample size, getting us ready for week 1 next week. We're going to kick off hour number 2. Excited to announce that Mike Johnson will be with us in this time slot all football season. He'll be with us Friday mornings at 10 a.m. to get us ready for the college football weekend ahead. And Mike has got so many things going on. It's really hard to keep up with all of them. We're going to get him to give us some announcements, but he's going to be writing for the Action Network. And I mean writing, stories, columns, and in addition to his broadcast work. Good morning, Mike. Tell us how this came about. I know you've got your first story about to be published. I know you're excited. What in the world is this all about?
Yeah, a good buddy of mine, Stephen Petrella, who I did some work with at SECcountry.com after SEC Country kind of folded and sold a few weeks back, asked me if I'd be interested in doing some writing for the Action Network. You know, I'm a guy who follows along with the gambling lines and likes to get involved. And so I said, I've never written anything in my life before. I've usually just been known as the big dumb jock who gets on camera and talks about things or gets behind the microphone, but I'll give it a crack. So I was really excited today to be able to put out my first ever article. It's my first ever crack at trying to write anything, Gary. And so talking about Bama's futures, talking about Heisman opportunities for some of their players, definitely down memory lane for me talking about some of those things, but really, really excited about it, and hope everybody gets a chance to enjoy it.
And I guess I can go ahead and mention this because someone from the network sent me the launch party information, and you're also going to be a part of the Backroads Sports Network, a big launch party coming up next week. Rachel Barbeau, Scott Moore, Tommy Tuberville. Can you give me a little insight on what this is all about?
Yeah, I mean, it's all coming together really quick. It's come together here in the last week or so for me, and it's something I'm incredibly excited about. It goes along with a lot of the things that I was doing at SEC Country, and just honestly, Gary, it's like you, just being able to connect to Bama fans and be able to connect to college football fans and talk a bunch. A lot of those details are still getting worked out, but you're right. My name's on the flyer, and I'm part of the company, and I am over the moon excited about the opportunity to work with all those people. I know that it's going to be a lot of great content and a lot of exciting conversations to be had there with Backroads.
Man, I tell you what, we're going to be getting a big dose of Mike Johnson. If you're a college football fan, that's a good thing. All right, let's get into some nuts and bolts. Alabama, Louisville, now just 8 days away. I'll be in Orlando this time next week getting ready for the game. Alabama now is in game preparation mode. Fall camp closed out on Tuesday. Classes started on Wednesday. Saban saying yesterday they've now jumped into to preparation. What's that like as a guy that's been through it? You spend most of fall camp just getting conditioned, getting ready for the season. Coaches looking at different players. It's hot. It's tired. It gets long. It's work. It's as much as you can cram in that period of time. Then all of a sudden you flip a switch and it's time to get ready to play a game. Is that something the players look forward to? Is there more focus? What's that transition like from fall camp into game preparation mode?
Yeah, it's different. And, the coaches will switch that gear. And, when I was playing, Gary, I didn't even realize. I didn't realize at the time because the coaches didn't want to talk about it a ton. But that 1 week where school kind of starts before you're really getting into Louisville prep, we always practice against different defensive fronts on scout teams. I never really asked questions, never really thought about it too much, but it was, it was about future defense that we'd be lining up against. They were letting us line up against what LSU defenses would look like or Auburn defenses and things that we would get comfortable with down the road. But I always felt like at this point, after camp, after school starts a little bit, but before your actual game week, that it was a renewed sense of focus to me. I mean, there's a million different things going on where a lot of schools don't even practice on the first day of actual college. When you have to report to classes and go into classes and do all those things, a lot of people don't even practice. And so I think it's intriguing to see this team kind of turn the corner, and hopefully they do have that renewed sense of focus, and hopefully they do keep their eye on the prize and say, hey, listen, we've got a lot of work still left to do before the season kicks off. But I know they're kicking it to the gear, and I know they're excited to hit somebody with a different color red, at least over there in the Louisville Cardinals. And the game is it's just out of reach for them. I know that feeling where I'm tired of hitting this guy, but we still have over a week away. It's just out of reach for them, but I know those guys are excited about it.
Nick Saban's record in these season-opening neutral site games is flawless. I mean, he's undefeated, and most of the time Alabama has just worn the other team out. But I would argue that this is the first time maybe one of the Virginia Tech games, maybe West Virginia, but even those games, I think there was still a feeling of, these are big games. Obviously, last year with Florida State, it was 1 versus 3. But this year, this game against Louisville, you don't sense – I mean, I've heard a lot of fans tell me, we're not going to go. We're not going to waste our money on this one. Say, this is going to be a blowout. It's a 26-point line. But this is still a opening game, national television, Saturday night, Orlando, Florida, Camping World kickoff game against a team with top-tier athletes, where the coach has a reputation of being a great offensive mind. No Lamar Jackson, but receivers that can make plays. Jawan Puma Pass, a guy who was highly recruited, included by Alabama. Why do you think the perception is that this is just going to be a complete rout? I think it could be a competitive game, at least for a while.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. And I understand the perception. I mean, listen, anybody who looks at Nick Saban's track record in some of these games where you expect it not to be a rout, a lot of times it does end up being a rout. I mean, the neutral site games, period, for Nick Saban has been, just downright incredible, his track record he's been able to have at Alabama. But I have talked to people, Gary, that say, Louisville doesn't stand a chance and there's no path to victory here. I think people are sadly mistaken. If they think there's no path to victory for Louisville, you are sadly mistaken. They have some offensive playmakers. They have some weapons. They have some speed. And a guy like Bobby Petrino knows how to attack a Nick Saban style of defense. Now, I don't think it's going to be easy. I think that their run defense, their front seven on defense is up for the toughest task maybe of their careers and what they'll be facing in terms of what this running game will be bringing. But there is a path, Gary. Like I said, there's a path to where you have a pass-happy offense with a Bobby Petrino that is just waiting to hopefully expose a brand-new secondary at Alabama. If they can get some protection on offense, you're going to see some offensive fireworks in the first half out of both of these teams. And I think that if they can find some protection for the quarterback, you're going to see them go blow for blow, at least for a little bit.
The quarterbacks, let's talk about it. We're 8 days away. I'm not expecting any kind of announcement from Nick Saban. As I said, like a poker player, he's not wanting to show his hand at all. I do believe, and this is what I want you to pick up on, that the players know exactly what's going on. I think they probably already, if not the complete plan, have a pretty good idea how the quarterback play is going to go in the first game and maybe even beyond. So they're not in the dark. But I expect that he's going to keep us, meaning the media and the fans, in the dark, maybe up until kickoff. You agree with that?
Yeah, no, listen, I made the comment last week on your show, and it makes even more sense as we get closer to kickoff. I honestly, Gary, I don't know that we're going to really know who the starting quarterback is till a few weeks into the season. I just don't. I think that you're going to see one of those guys come out and take the first snap, and another guy probably be on the field for the second series. And I think that's the way it's going to work. And I don't know that it's to the benefit of the offense, but I think it's extremely hard to kind of game plan for both those guys if you're defensive coordinator. So I don't think there'll be any benefit in coming out and saying who the guy's going to be. And I don't know if we'll know once we get into the game. I think both those guys will get snaps in this next football game. So we'll see. And, obviously it's going to be the talking point, for everybody leading up to the game. But anybody who says they know or they have a definite answer, I think they're a liar, because I think Nick Saban and Michael Locksley and Dan Enos are the only guys that really, really know what's going to happen next Saturday. And I'm excited to find out. It's going to be the end of an era, Gary, finding out who the quarterback is for Alabama. I mean, it's been a talking point for, 7 months now. So it's going to be the end of an era, but it's going to be exciting to see those guys finally on the field. Yeah,
no doubt about it. Getting back to Alabama's secondary versus, as you said, a Bobby Petrino offense. He knows how to attack a defense. They've got wide receivers that can make plays. Quarterback's unproven, but reportedly, from what I'm hearing, can really sling it and is athletic. This Alabama secondary is going to be talented. I don't care what 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 guys they put out there. They're all highly recruited, skilled athletes. But most of them haven't played much. Some of them haven't played at all. You've already said you're a little bit concerned about that. To have to open up against a team like this that's going to have a good plan, how much angst is there from your standpoint in regards to this secondary being able to get their feet wet in a hurry and make adjustments and not give up big plays, particularly as they're just not only feeling out Louisville, but feeling out for some of them what it's like to play in a college football game?
Isn't that crazy to think about that, these guys that are so good and so talented, this is going to be for a lot of them, their first real game action. I think that's absolutely incredible to even think about. And, I do have some angst. I think the word that Nick Saban has used throughout fall camp, throughout his pressers, has been consistency. Every time he talks about Trevon Diggs, every time he talks about Deontay Thompson, every time he talks about any member of that secondary, he says, well, these guys are consistent and these guys have not been that consistent, and these guys need to work on their consistency. And I think that's a scary word when you're talking about a brand new secondary and you're talking about Bobby Petrino offense, that they're going to have 2, 3, 4 options every time they drop back to pass. So having that consistency and making sure you're doing your job every snap, it's going to be a big deal. Now, listen, I think that Nick Saban and company and everybody really on that defensive coaching staff can do a great job of getting these guys coached up, but this is also this defensive coaching staff's first real stab at it. And so I think all those things mixed in together, I am anxious about it. I think it's going to be interesting to see it all come together. It's actually showtime. It's like watching a play come together. Everybody's been kind of rehearsing, what they're going to do, and all of a sudden the lights come on. And so I think I'm excited about that. I do have a lot of anxiousness about what they're going to look like, but like you said, I think athletically those guys can go up against anybody right now, and I'm sure they're going to give it a go.
All right, I can't have you on here as a college football analyst and not get your opinion on the Urban Meyer story. He is going to be suspended for the first 3 games without pay. Gene Smith, the athletics director, suspended for a couple of weeks without pay as well. But all in all, I think for Smith and Meyer, this ended well. They're both still going to be gainfully employed by the Ohio State University. It's not a good look for Ohio State. I'm gonna agree with everybody else on that. The way this thing was handled, the way that press conference went. Having said that, I know I'm not as quick to pile on as some of my media brethren, in that I don't know if Ohio State got it right or not. They said that Meyer reported it. Certainly there seems to be a lack of compassion for the alleged victim. At the same time, Meyer admitted he had a weakness for Zach Smith, having known him since he was a kid. He played for him at Bowling Green. His grandfather, Earl Bruce, was his mentor. So there's real-life issues going on here. But at the end of the day, he's still the head football coach at Ohio State, and the media is having a field day with this. And I do think once the season started and he's back on the sidelines, maybe it will pass unless Ohio State struggles. Just your opinion on how it all turned out, and is this something that could linger for Ohio State and for Urban Meyer, in your opinion?
Yeah, I'm with you, Gary. And you and I usually see eye to eye in these circumstances where neither one of us are really the first guy to just continue to pile on. I think that a lot of people in the national media have already kind of taken that tone and have done a pretty good job. And listen, it is well needed in a lot of these different circumstances. My thought, not pro Urban Meyer, but my thought of always never piling on is, boy, you better hope there's not like some kind of inside article written about Sports Illustrated or ESPN or some of these other companies, because there's no telling, what kind of skeletons are in their closet, and a lot of these people are piling on. But, I think that Urban Meyer will overcome it. I think that this is the guy who is beloved by a lot of Ohio State fans now, and for right now, that's all that matters. I will say this, whether you're pro Urban Meyer, whether you're against Urban Meyer, whether you think he should have been fired or suspended or whatever, that press conference was an absolute disaster. I mean, it was an unmitigated disaster, the way he looked, and that press conference, reading off that paper, refusing to really talk about Courtney Smith and the entire situation. It was a disaster. And so I think no matter which side of things you lay on, you can go ahead and point to that and say that was an absolute missed opportunity for them. But I think they'll overcome it. I think Ohio State will be a great football team this year. For better or worse, I think that Urban Meyer's career will continue on. So hopefully there was a lot of lessons learned around every side of the table on this one, and hopefully it's a situation we don't have to see dealt with in college football for a long time.
Well, Jimbo Fisher came in with a mandate for the Texas A&M football players to toughen up. He didn't hide that. And according to Santino Marcial, former player, now back at Arizona with his former coach Kevin Sumlin, Sumlin and his coaches not only had a mission to toughen up players, they had a mission to do a lot of other things that are in violation of NCAA rules, from handing out money to give to recruits to holding illegal workouts for evaluations of current players on the team. Then you throw in all of the demeaning language that Marcial alleges, and pushing him through an injury when he should not have been practicing. And you've got a situation where he wants to transfer and be given a chance to be eligible immediately, so he uses this mitigating circumstances clause, and in the process just really makes some serious allegations against A&M. Now, I do think you have to keep this in context that he and his dad wanted out of there. They're certainly going to try to make their case look good. At the same time, if nothing else, on the heels of the DJ Durkin Maryland story, Rick Court Maryland story, this is a bad look, if nothing else. Your impressions of what you're seeing with this A&M story, here we are 8 days away from the season.
Yeah, no, this is another situation, Gary, where I look at it and say, man, that looks really bad. And obviously a lot of things happened that were very wrong, that should never have happened. But it does make you wonder, A, how many other programs, things like this are happening around whenever there is a transition of power from one head coach to another, and a coach has been brought in to toughen up players. I think you're probably going to see this a lot of places where that's been asked of a head coach. And the second biggest thing for me, and honestly, it's probably the biggest takeaway from the entire story, is how much is the NCAA going to look into this? Because I think this really, really, really opens up a can of worms. If you're going to allow guys to leave a university and to pile on to the university they're leaving about NCAA rules violations, I think this is going to be a long road. I don't think that's going to end anytime soon, because more and more you have these guys want to transfer, and they're trying to find their way out of there. And if telling the NCAA, or even possibly lying to the NCAA about what's going on at the university you're leaving, gains you immediate eligibility, I think that's something you're going to see a lot of people kind of go down the road and continue to do. And so it's going to be interesting to follow the NCAA on this one, Gary, and see how much they look into these allegations, or if they're willing to grant that immediate eligibility over at Arizona for this kid, because the implications of that are going to be very far and wide-reaching for a lot of college football teams. So it's something I'll be following pretty close, and it's interesting one way or another that the news that's coming out of there. Yeah, you're right. It's not a good look for Jimbo Fisher at all right now.
Lastly, I want to get your thoughts on the press conference last Thursday with Greg Byrne and Nick Saban and University President Dr. Stuart Bell. The Crimson Standard fundraising initiative was officially announced. $600 million goal over 10 years, $143 million already raised. $600 million is a lot of money. And in this era of so many things that are unknown about the future of collegiate athletics, Alabama is asking their donors again to step up. Let's not just keep up with the Joneses. Let's stay ahead. I think obviously you want to do this while Nick Saban is still in his prime, and he is in his coaching prime. I have no doubt about that. But that's a lot of money, and a lot of money. I've had some people tell me, well, it's Alabama. $600 million is a lot of money. I'm telling you. You got $143 million raised. You're still $457 million short. Is this asking a little too much of your donors and your fan base, or is this just doing business in the big boy world of collegiate athletics?
Yeah, I kind of bounce back and forth with that myself. And obviously, I think that you have to do everything you can do if you're Greg Byrne right now. I think, to me, this was a piece about Greg Byrne's legacy at Alabama and about the next transition to come, because that's what I read into it more than anything, Gary. I looked at the situation and I said, wow, okay, in my opinion, Nick Saban's not going to coach 10 more years. So at some point in this next 10 years, in this Crimson Standard project, over $600 million over 10 years, there's going to be a coaching transition. And to me, this is Greg Byrne being able to have something to point to, whether it's 5 years, whether it's 7 years when Nick Saban leaves. He's going to have this to point to and say, hey, listen, if you want to come coach here, we're going to pay you good money, and there's no need to even ask for new facilities because everything is top-notch already at Alabama. We already have $600 billion kind of sunken into jumbotrons and all kinds of new stuff for stadiums, and obviously with the basketball facilities and all the good things that are going on at the football facility. To me, this is Greg Byrne saying, hey, listen, I didn't bring Nick Saban in. I'm not part of this legacy. I'm glad that he's here, but this is a chance for us to kind of look down the road and make sure that next chapter in Alabama football is still a great one. And so for that reason, I think he's doing what's necessary. Obviously, it's a ton of money, but $60 million a year over the next 10 years, I think that they'll be able to find the money one way or another, and I think it's a great project to be able to try to get done.
Well, folks, you hear him every week here on my show. Be looking out for the Backroads Radio Network that Mike Johnson's going to be a part of. We've already said He'll be writing columns for the Action Network. You'll see him this fall as an analyst on CBS 42. I'm telling you, man, I like to call myself the hardest working man in broadcasting. You're trying to give me a run for my money here, pal.
Listen, I haven't said no in quite some time, Gary. I enjoy talking college football, and so anytime the opportunity presents itself, I'm usually the first one to jump on board. But I'm so excited for the fall to get here, and obviously look forward to talking to you guys each and every week right here.
And give him a follow on Twitter at MPJohnson79. And wanted to talk to you about the Falcons a little bit, but we better get to the break, so we'll save that for another week. Thanks a lot, my friend.
Hey, thanks a lot, Gary. See you soon.